Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be on what kind of foods you need to eat in order to reach your goals, whether that be losing weight, gaining weight, maybe even maintaining the physique that you've achieved through dieting, gaining muscle, whatever it is that you've been doing. So to break this down, I'm going to go through calories, macros, the ratios for those macros, and what each of those should really be looking like depending on what your goal is, so weight loss, maintaining your weight, or gaining more weight. So for those of you out there that don't know, diet makes up the majority of what it takes in order for you to reach your fitness goals. Roughly 70 to 80% of the hard work that you put in order to reach your goal physique, your goal strength, is what you do in the kitchen and what you eat. So how many calories you eat, how you have your macros set out. So let's just start with kind of this step one of finding where it is that your diet should be based on your goals. So what you want to do is find out what your maintenance calories are. Now what this is the number of calories that your body requires given the daily activity that you go for. So if you have an active job, desk job, and on a daily basis you do this much exercise, you walk this far, blah blah blah. Now in order to find out these calories, you need a few factors that are going to help you get the most accurate reading that you can of the number that you should be aiming for. These factors include height, weight, age, and your daily activity level. So the daily activity level, really put it in the most simple way, is if you're more of an active person, let's say you're a construction worker or a labourer, someone that is going to be doing a lot of movement, maybe even like a personal trainer that runs a boot camp, something like that, where you're going to be doing a lot of running, walking, lifting, the kind of things that are going to require a lot of calories in order to do those activities. You're going to have to bump your calories up a little bit more. So let's just say for a minute that 2,000 calories for a male is the kind of neutral level that you should be consuming in order to maintain your weight. So someone that has quite an active job and requires slightly more calories would say have maybe 2,200 as their maintenance level, whereas someone that's is fairly active but not quite as much, they would maybe have 2,100 as their calorie maintenance. Then if we look at someone that has more of a kind of peaceful activity level job, like a clerical job, answering the telephone and maybe a call center, the calories for this person would more likely be at the lower level, so maybe just 2,000 calories. So those numbers aren't exact, it of course depends on your height, weight and everything that I just said, but from the examples that I just used, you can tell that obviously someone that has more of an active level throughout the day is going to burn more calories in general and therefore require more calories in order to maintain their weight. Now this activity level will be the same for whether you're in a deficit, so trying to lose weight, or in a surplus trying to gain weight. Someone in a clerical job that's trying to gain weight and goes to the gym would maybe have to have, again, 2,400 calories, something like that. But a labourer, because they're burning more calories on a daily basis, would need, say, 2,800 in order to go into a calorie surplus. So don't forget how important that activity level is, because it might not be that many calories that you think you're burning throughout the day, but your body is still putting in the work, you're still burning those calories, so you need to make sure you bear that in mind when you're trying to calculate your macros and your calories. Okay, now with surpluses and deficits, if the goal that you have in mind is to gain weight and more likely put on muscle, then once you've calculated your calorie maintenance, you're going to want to go into a surplus, and how much of a surplus you go into depends on what kind of training it is that you're doing and what you want your body to look like. So if you go into a large calorie surplus of maybe 500 to 1,000 calories past what your maintenance is, then you're going to give yourself the best chance of building muscle, but you're also going to build and add a lot of fat to your body. So a lot of people that do powerlifting, strongman, competing, those kind of things will usually have a lot more calories than they necessarily need in order to gain muscle, and therefore will add fat as well. But they kind of need it for their training, as they're going to be lifting a lot of heavy weight and they need to make sure that their body is loaded up with as much as they can to make sure they get stronger, because that is their primary goal. Whereas with a bodybuilder that's trying to maintain quite a lean physique throughout the year but still go through a gaining phase and a cutting phase, in the gaining phase, rather than have a lot of calories, so close to what a strongman has, so 500 to 1,000 calories surplus, they're more likely to have maybe a 200, maybe even 300 just as a push calorie surplus. Now remember what I said before about the activity level, and obviously if you burn a lot more calories throughout the day, that's going to be a much higher surplus because you're burning those calories just from your general life and your work usually. So if you want to gain lean mass but you don't want to put on too much fat, then I'd go for probably 250 to 300 calorie surplus. Obviously play around with it a little bit, and if you notice that you're putting on a lot of fat but you're also obviously putting on muscle, then maybe dial it back a little bit. But if you're quite new to bodybuilding and you want to gain as much size as you can in quite a short space of time, then going for the higher calorie surplus is going to give you the best chance, but you just got to watch out for that fat. Do not do what I did, where I would just eat enough in order to gain muscle and then regret how much fat I'd gained after that. The good news for you guys out there that are fairly new to bodybuilding and training is that even if you're in a small calorie surplus, you're going to see muscle and weight go up really quickly, and probably within the first year of being in a surplus you could gain a good 20-25 pounds of lean muscle. So make sure that your training's good, of course, but your diet doesn't have to be a massive surplus if you're just starting out. It'll give you the better chance, but really all your body needs is about 200 to 300 calories. Now with weight loss, this is pretty much the exact same thing as this surplus, it's just the other spectrum of it. So rather than going 200 to 300 calories higher than your calorie maintenance in order to build muscle, what you want to be doing with weight loss and being in a cutting phase is to do the opposite of that. So go into not 300 calorie deficit right away. It is a little bit more complicated, but let's go through that now. Now when it comes to doing a cutting phase, depending on what your body is like at the time and what your body fat percentage is, determines how much of a deficit you're going to start with. So if you have quite a lot of fat and maybe it's obvious that you have, say, 15-20% body fat, then you're better off starting with 500-600 calories. If, however, you've got quite a lean physique and your body percentage is more of the 10%, 12% area, then you're more likely going to be going into a deficit of maybe 100-150 calories at the start. So it doesn't sound that bad, does it? You're not really under eating. And then obviously the lower your body fat gets and the harder it gets for you to drop the little bit of fat that's still on your body, the more of a deficit that you're going to go into. But you need to watch out with this. You want to make sure that you're not going into too low of a deficit to the point where your metabolism is getting attacked and it's a lot harder for you to metabolize the fat and actually lose it. So what I suggest with this is drop 150 to 200 calories at the start if you have a lean physique and you're not necessarily like overweight. And then when it gets to the more difficult stages of the weight loss, that's when you want to drop your calories a little bit more again. So at that point, what you're going to want to do is recalculate your maintenance calories, because as your weight has dropped, your maintenance calories would have lowered, and this is the exact same for when you're putting on size. So if you gain 10 pounds of muscle, 15 pounds of muscle, that's when you're going to want to recalculate your macros to make sure that you are still eating enough, and it will gradually go up and up and up the more weight you gain. So 150 calorie deficit to start with, 2 weeks you dropped weight, recalculate your maintenance calories, and then at that point go into another 150 calorie deficit. So your maintenance is dropping and then you're dropping the exact same deficit as you did when you started. But if you think about it at the same time, it's kind of like the first deficit that you started with is adding up to the second deficit, so it's like 300 total calories into a deficit. I'm going to stop trying to ramble with this. Basically, when you've reached the point where your calories are quite low and you can tell that you're getting quite hungry throughout the day, rather than go any lower to lose the last bit of fat that you got, you're going to want to keep your calories at the same place but do more cardio and more calorie burning exercises. You could also do this at the start of your cutting phase. It just depends on whether you want to just drop your calories a little bit more and kind of, you know, let the diet do the work and have the fat fall off at the start, and then later on in the diet go into the cardio stages but keeping your calories the same. Or you could even keep your maintenance the exact same, not change your calories at all, and then just put more work in the gym to get into that deficit. God, I really feel like I'm confusing you guys with this. I hope I'm making sense with this. Right now, I've been saying a lot about how to calculate your calories and what the factors are. All of this can be worked out for you on an online calculator, so I will actually link one below, put in all the information, so your height, your weight, whether you're male or female, your activity level, and it will work out how much your calorie maintenance is. And then from there I would typically just do it based on 150 calorie deficit, 150 calorie surplus, just working out that way. Some sites actually give you a recommendation of how much you should be eating, but it's usually a lot under for cutting and a lot over for bulking. Now, last part of this video is going to be the macro ratios. So the macronutrients are fats, carbs and your protein. So those three macros are the things that people most often count. You can also count your sodium, potassium, fiber, all of that stuff, because they are equally as important. However, I would just stick to calculating and reaching your macros of those three, so fat, carbs and protein. Now the ratios or percentages that you might want to refer to it as for each of these are slightly different. When you're trying to maintain weight, everything is roughly the same. So carbs will be about 35, 40, your protein will be about 30 again, and then the rest of that will be your fat. However, if you're into training and you're maybe a bodybuilder, then you want to make sure that things are a little bit different so that you can maintain your muscles. So your protein, as a rule of thumb, should roughly be about 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass, or maybe even 1.1 pound of lean body mass. So I weigh currently 160 pound. My lean body mass, I don't know exactly, but it's probably about 150, 153, something like that. So for protein, I would eat just above 150, so roughly 160, 165, just to be safe. By having this, it means that if your protein does get used as an energy source and not in order to recover your muscles, then it's not going to eat away at your protein source and you be under what you should be eating for protein. Carbs are also quite important, but there's no real like gram per body weight that you should really stick to. You just need to make sure that it's kind of the bulk of your diet. And now with fats, the only thing that I'd say you really need to watch out for is making sure that you don't go below about 15% of your macronutrients as fat. Okay, now if you're trying to gain muscle and you're in a surplus, then obviously you're going to be eating more calories. Now with the macronutrients, your fat should pretty much stay the same. Your protein again should be 1.1 gram per pound body weight. The only thing that I'd say is that you need to make sure that your carbs are high enough. Now with weight loss, it's kind of again flipped around. Again, keeping the fat fairly low, but not too low, about 15 to 20% of your entire macros. But this time, instead of the protein being quite high and the carbs also being quite high, you want to make sure that the carbs are kind of maintenance level, so roughly 35% of your entire macros, and then your protein fills out the rest of that. So when you're bulking, your protein is probably going to be, let's say, 180 in order for you to repair your muscles and gain muscle mass. And then when you're dieting, you want to actually increase that slightly by about 10-15 grams, because when you're in a deficit, the first thing that you're going to be looking to drop is your carbs. So basically, as your carbs go down, your protein is going to go up to make sure that you aren't losing the muscle that you already have and you have already built. Because obviously being in a deficit, you're going to be eating under what you should be in order to lose the weight, because that's what it takes. So yeah, deficit, make sure that your protein's high enough and your carbs are gradually lowering the lower your calories go. So each time your carbs go down, let your protein go up a little bit so that you are maintaining your muscle mass. When you're in a surplus, make sure that they're both quite high, but most importantly your carbs. And then when you're maintaining, everything's fairly the same, but make sure that your protein is high enough to maintain your muscle. So I think I've probably gone through everything that you guys probably need to know regarding calories, maintenance, all of that, macronutrients, blah 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 blah. So I'm just going to leave it here. Just want to say thank you to you guys for watching this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe if you're new. I'll catch you guys in the next one.